You're behind the decks in a Donetsk nightclub. The bass is shaking the floor. The crowd is packed. Arms up, sweating. The lights pulse. You are DJ Slava Rich, and right now, at 2 in the morning, this room belongs to you completely. You got here at midnight. Before that, you were in your office. Before that, you were moving money across 3 countries. Before that, you were draining a small business's bank account in Nebraska. Nobody in this room knows that. Nobody in this room knows that by the time the sun comes up, your crew will have stolen another $100,000 from people who will wake up to find their savings are simply gone. Nobody in this room knows your other name. Tank. But let's go back. Before the decks. Before the malware. Before the $73 million that a federal judge in Nebraska will one day order you to repay. Let's go back to Donetsk. To a kid sitting in a bedroom, bored, staring at a screen, discovering that the internet isn't just a place to play games. It's a place where the rules haven't been written yet. You grow up in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine, industrial city, steel and coal. The horizon is always gray, and ambition tends to go sideways or underground. You are not a programmer by nature. You are something more useful than that. A people person. Charming, easy in a room. You make friends without effort and remember everything about everyone you meet. Your entry into hacking doesn't begin with code. It begins with games. Online gaming forums in the late 1990s. FIFA 99. Counter-Strike. Communities where teenagers trade cheat codes and exploits. Tricks that let you bend the rules without breaking them outright. You are good at finding those communities. Good at finding the people inside them who know things. You start understanding that the same logic, find the gap in the system, slide through before anyone notices, applies to things far more valuable than a video game. You don't need to write the malware yourself. You never will. What you understand early and what keeps you ahead for 15 years. You don't need to be the most technically skilled person in the room. You need to know which rooms to walk into. And you are very, very good at walking into rooms. It's 2009. You are in your mid-20s. You have an office in Donetsk. It is modest. It looks like nothing. Inside it, you and a tight group of hackers have just started using a piece of malware called Zeus. Zeus is not something you built. It was created by a developer who sold it on underground forums. A banking Trojan, a piece of code so elegant and vicious that cybersecurity experts will spend years studying it. What Zeus does is simple. It waits, invisible, inside a victim's computer. When the victim logs into their bank account, Zeus watches. It captures the username, the password, the account number, everything it needs. Then it sends that information to you. Your group calls itself Jabber Zeus. Named for the Zeus malware and for Jabber, the encrypted instant messaging system you use to coordinate in real time. Every move encrypted. Every conversation erased. Every stolen credential funneled through a network of money mules. Ordinary people, recruited online, who transfer stolen funds across borders and take a cut. You are the leader. Not because you write the best code, because you run the best operation. You sit in the chair. You manage the mules. You handle the money flow. You make the calls. Your crew brings you bank credentials the way fishermen bring in nets, constantly, daily, in volume. The math is straightforward. Thousands of infected computers. Hundreds of business bank accounts. Each one drained before the owner even sees their morning balance. Your first target isn't a bank. Banks have real defenses. Your target is a small business, an accountant, a church, a local government office. People who use online banking because it's convenient, who have real money sitting in real accounts, and whose IT security is a password written on a sticky note under a keyboard. Zeus arrives by email, an attachment that looks like an invoice, a PDF that looks real. The victim opens it, nothing appears to happen. But Zeus is inside now, quiet, watching, waiting. A few days later, you see the credentials arrive in your panel. Username, password, account balance. You log in, not as yourself, through a proxy. You initiate a transfer. The money goes to a mule account. The Mule withdraws cash, takes their cut, sends the rest. Start to finish, 72 hours. The victim calls their bank a week later. The bank investigates. By then, the trail is so layered, so deliberately tangled, that investigators are looking at wire transfers across 4 countries, fake identities, and shell accounts that no longer exist. You check your balance. Cybercrime was easy money, you'll say later, from a prison interview room in Colorado. Banks didn't know how to stop it. Your hands are not shaking. They never shake. Fast forward. It's 2009 to 2010. You are running Jabberzeus from that office in Donetsk, and the money is arriving faster than you imagined. 600 UK victims lose over £4 million, roughly $5.2 million, in just 3 months. Small businesses, charities, government accounts, organizations that trusted their banks and their computers and their own employees not to click the wrong attachment. They clicked. Across the United States, small businesses start waking up to find their accounts emptied overnight. Payroll accounts, operating funds, life savings folded into business accounts that now show zero. You buy cars the way other people buy shirts. BMWs, Porsches, an Audi S8 fitted with a 450 horsepower Lamborghini engine. Because you can, and because nobody in Donetsk is going to stop a man in a car like that to ask where the money came from. And at night, you are DJ Slava rich. You play the clubs in Donetsk. You are good at it. The crowd doesn't know you. The city doesn't know you. You are just the DJ with the expensive car and the easy smile who spins a great set and buys rounds for the VIP section. Your political connections are extraordinary for someone your age. The late Viktor Yanukovych Jr., son of Ukraine's future president, is godfather to your daughter Miloslava. You move in rooms where those connections mean real protection. You are untouchable, or very close to it. Back in your office, the Jabberzeus operation is generating more money than you can move fast enough. The FBI, monitoring the growing wave of banking fraud across the United States, is building a case they will name Operation Trident Breach. It's 2010. The FBI's operation is ready. In October, law enforcement agencies across the United States, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom coordinate simultaneous arrests of Jabberzeus members. 5 alleged members are arrested in Ukraine after property searches. More are picked up in other countries. You are not among them. Here is how they identified you, and how they almost had you. An investigator was going through encrypted Jabber chat logs, cross-referencing usernames across forums, building a profile. Then, one day, in the middle of a chat, someone using the username Tank mentioned something personal. The birth of his daughter. Her name. Her birth weight. The kind of detail a proud father drops without thinking. The investigators narrow the field. They match the username to a face, to a name, to an address in Donetsk. By the time the raid comes, you are gone. You escape in your Audi S8, Lamborghini engine running at full noise, during a chase that should have ended things. It doesn't. In February 2012, a Nebraska grand jury indicts you. The FBI puts you on its cybermost-wanted list. A photograph of your face, the same face that smiles out from DJ Slava Rich promotional flyers, goes up alongside the world's most wanted cybercriminals. You change your name. You become Vyacheslav Igorovich Andreev on paper. You keep playing shows, publicly, openly, because you are still in Ukraine, and Ukraine is not extraditing you, and you know it. The paranoia is there, underneath, but confidence keeps it down. You've been in the sights of the FBI for 2 years, and you are still free, still behind the decks, still buying rounds in the VIP section. You try to go clean. In 2014, Russia annexes Crimea. Eastern Ukraine begins to fracture. The coal business you invested in collapses. The political protection you relied on becomes unreliable in a region that is, suddenly, a war zone. You are broke. You are on the FBI's most wanted list. The life you built in Donetsk is rubble, not from a raid, but from geopolitics you didn't see coming. So you go back to what works. In 2018, You resurface inside a new malware operation called ICEDID, also known as BotBot. Same principle as Zeus. Infect computers, steal banking credentials, distribute ransomware through the infected machines. But ICEDID's targets are larger now. Universities, hospitals. In October 2020, ransomware distributed through ICEDID hits the University of Vermont Medical Center. The hospital's computer networks are encrypted. Patient services go dark for over 2 weeks. Chemotherapy appointments canceled, records inaccessible, nurses working from handwritten notes. The damage, more than $30 million. Real patients, real consequences. You will later deny direct involvement in that specific attack, but you were leading the operation, and your own spreadsheets, kept as meticulous income records, show ICEDID generating more than $19.9 million in 2021 alone. Then, in October 2022, you travel to Geneva, Switzerland. You are meeting your wife. Swiss police are waiting. You are arrested on the spot. Extradited to the United States in 2023. In February 2024, in a Nebraska federal courthouse, you plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit racketeering for your role in Zeus, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud for your role in ICEDID. On July 9th, 2024, a federal judge sentences you to 9 years in federal prison and 3 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay $73 million in restitution and forfeiture. You are 37 years old. You're in Englewood Federal Correctional Facility in Colorado. You agree to an interview with BBC correspondent Joe Tidy, 6 hours, across multiple sessions. You are charming. You smile easily. You say you are a sociable person who makes friends without effort. The same description your associates gave of Tank in the Jabber Zeus days. You tell the BBC that cybercrime was easy money, that banks didn't know how to stop it, that hackers saw others make millions from one attack, so everyone started going after hospitals. You don't explain the woman who couldn't get her chemotherapy appointment. You don't explain the small business owner who lost payroll and couldn't make salaries. You don't linger there. Your associate and one-time network connection, Maxim Yakubets, leader of Evil Corp, one of Russia's most notorious cybercrime groups, remains free in Moscow, surrounded by bodyguards, untouchable behind a government that does not extradite. You cooperated. You pleaded guilty. You are in Colorado. 9 years, $73 million to repay. The DJ booth is a long way from here. That was your life. Every encrypted message, every business account emptied before sunrise, every night behind the decks while your crew moved stolen money across borders. And here's the question that should sit with you. He said cybercrime was easy because banks didn't know how to stop it. But someone always knows. A chat log, a daughter's name, a trip to Geneva. Was there ever a moment you actually felt safe? Tell me in the comments. See you in the next one.